I remember thinking this is not worth whatever high.
Absolutely. That's what most people would say. That's the reasonable response.
Sure.
This time tomorrow, where will we be?
Today's episode is with my friend TJ. TJ and I have played in 3 or 4 different bands together. We talk about all kinds of things, what it was like to live with 8 roommates in a duplex when we were each 22, and the ways in which one person's addiction can lead to another's recovery. TJ is a super talented photographer, editor, he plays multiple instruments, super introspective and smart, and it was really nice having him on for this episode.
Sun behind me, and I watch the clouds as they sadly pass me by.
Well, thanks for doing this. So a big group of us, all of us in our early 20s, moved into a big house together. There must have been 8 of us there. You and I were in multiple bands together. All the bands mostly practiced in the basement, as you know, most Midwestern bands do.
That place was a dungeon.
Yeah, and it clearly had toxic black mold everywhere. I played drums very poorly. My first time drumming in a band. You played guitar, Jim played bass, and you sang and wrote the songs, and that was called Black Mold.
Jim wrote lyrics for...
Okay, so you and Jim wrote those songs. Yeah. So let's talk about Bernie's for a second.
Sure.
Bernie's is a venue that I don't think is around anymore. In Columbus, right?
I don't think it is, no.
Yeah, so Bernie's was the most dive bar of the dive. You could get food there, but you would just see rats running around.
No, I literally was ordering a sandwich there one time, and I saw in my peripheral vision a rat running across the floor. I said, you know what? Just go ahead and cancel that order. I'll just go to the bar.
Black Mold played at Bernie's, so we showed up, 5 bands billed, and none of them showed up.
None of them.
Just us.
Just us.
and we had done no promotion. So like none of our friends came.
No.
And they just kept giving us free liquor.
Yeah.
So we played for virtually no one. I remember you like jumped off of the kick drum and like slammed your head against the ceiling because it was like a low-hanging ceiling.
Bernie's was in a basement.
Black Mold only played in basements.
Yeah.
I remember I was smoking weed on stage in between songs. It was kind of like romantic. Like I feel like we viewed it as kind of a positive experience almost. As like a truly punk rock thing where it was just like, we show up, we rock the house even if nobody's there, we get wasted. We were like screaming on the way home.
I broke 4 guitar strings.
We could imagine that it was as fucking amazing as we all viewed it, being as intoxicated as we were.
It was the pinnacle of what we could have achieved as punks.
Can you imagine what that show actually looked and sounded like? I can't even imagine. So I bring up that story because like I want to pair that with the end of my time in Columbus. We went to Bernie's. Here we were there again like 4 years after the story we just told. Playing with some of the same bands that we'd always played with. There super early, just hanging out, just drinking. And I caught somebody doing coke in the bathroom, so I bought a bag. I blacked out before we went on stage. I think I was too drunk to even tune the guitar.
Oh, wow.
And like I was falling down. Damn. Like I fell on the keyboard. I couldn't remember the words or like know what was happening enough. I think Pete from Electric Grandmother just got on stage and started singing for me.
Whoa.
And it led to like almost an
intervention?
An intervention between me and the other guys in the band. You know, I was too drunk to like really care. The night I felt really bad because Joe was so mad at me. And I like, you know, was doing the like drunk rationalization thing of like, you're being lame.
It's not punk to play your
it's like fucking right? Cool. Like, who cares? You know, and there were other dirtbags at that show that were like my drinking friends that were like, oh, it's fucking awesome, man. There was so much pursuit of that like self-destructive romance.
Sure.
You know? I mean, you said you wanted to talk about Elliot Smith.
It's a perfect lead-in because it's that sort of mythology, like Lou Reed talking about kind of excusing his drug use because he's like, the city structure, like New York City, is poison in and of itself. So like he poisons himself to counteract the poison of the city.
There's some truth to that. You know, the idea of like, why would you want to be sane in a crazy society? If you're doing well in this fucked up world, that's a sign that you're actually the one who's ill. It's also just like a rationalization of like a shitty feeling.
The same kind of thing with Elliot Smith. I think he was more frank about it. He's like self-aware. The addiction is such a powerful thing that it doesn't matter if you're self-aware. It's still going to be there.
I feel like I relate with that as well.
Oh yeah, I co-opted both of those. It's the well-trodden path of the brilliant musician.
If I'm not as self-destructive as these guys, then I am not as talented as these guys.
Sure.
And what's the point then?
You can't get as talented as them unless you do that,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
It unlocks
was part of it.
something.
And Elliot Smith, he was impersonating the Lou Reeds.
Sure.
You know, the same way we were impersonating Elliot Smith. I think in that household was when I was ordering dried poppy pods off of eBay.
Yeah.
And I would grind them up, or I'd just make a tea out of it, and it tasted disgusting.
It did.
No one wanted it.
No.
No one else would
tried
do
it
it.
one time.
Everybody would try it once. Most people wouldn't finish the cup.
Sure. I remember thinking this is not worth whatever high.
Absolutely. That's what most people would say. That's the reasonable
Sure,
response. You know, that was a part of my identity. Like, I was the guy who grew mushrooms. Like, I was the guy who discovered that you could order dried poppy pods, make a tea out of it. And I remember when I got the box and I was showing it to you and the roommates, and I was like, look at this. You said, so you're just going to be like a junkie now? like William Burroughs kind of thing? It was a joke. I felt like I was cosplaying being a junkie. In that apartment, I lived in an all-black attic. Black walls, black floor, black ceiling.
I forgot that that's the way that upstairs was painted.
Yeah, it was. And I thought it was cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
It was cool.
It was cool.
It was rad.
It's like a black box theater.
Yeah, I felt like Edward Scissorhands. But anyway, if you've ever done opiates, you've probably thrown up off of it at some point or another, if you've done it enough times. And I just remember waking up in the middle of the night one time, just knowing it was about to happen, and just running down, like running to the stairs, running down the stairs, running through the one room, and then I had to make I think a right to get to the bathroom, and I got to so I hit the wall and just threw up all over the wall.
Holy shit.
And it was so dire, such a dire situation, because obviously I felt awful. Felt so gross.
I don't remember this at
I
all.
cleaned it.
Oh, okay.
And everybody was asleep.
Oh.
I did it, and I just fell down on my knees. Like, I can't imagine a worse scenario than this. You know, like, I feel so bad. All I want to do is go back to bed. But I threw up all over the wall. So I had to go down more stairs, get whatever to clean it, and like probably did a poor job cleaning it, but did, and then went back upstairs and went to sleep.
Years later, I had foot surgery, and they gave me a prescription for, I think it was 70 Percocet. And after day 3, I didn't technically need them.
Sure.
Like, my foot didn't hurt anymore. Like, I couldn't walk on it. I still had to use crutches. But I was like, yeah, it doesn't really hurt.
Yeah.
But for those 2 weeks I was off work, I was floating on cloud Percocet.
Sure.
When I went back to work, I was still on them, but I had started to run out. So I was starting to half them. I was starting to quarter them.
Yeah.
There was a woman at work who I liked, and like I gave her a quarter. And in my mind, it was like this was my most precious thing. I'm giving it to you.
Yeah.
And I think by wanting to ration them out so that I could be high longer, I was actually weaning myself off.
For me, like, binges were somewhat rare. Sometimes I would do it all in one night, and sometimes I would like stretch it out where I'd just do a couple, like I'd savor it. It definitely like depended on what the connect was. With pills, it was always so random that like I would tend to savor it more for the most part. But I mean, I feel like the first time I really got into opiates was like somebody had morphine. I don't even know what it was. It looked like one of those like IV bags. It wasn't like a powder, it was more like a gel.
Right. Okay.
But anyway, I like full on did tons of it, like nod off. I got the full effect. So it was like then when like poppy pods came in, felt like a much milder version of that. Yeah, there's something about like the narcotics that is just different than alcohol for me. I mean, I would steal people's pills. You said you gave your coworker like a quarter of one, you know. That's a common thing that happens, you know. I would like try to figure out where they had the rest of the stash sort of thing. Like, it was awful. And like sometimes it would be like, I know they're gonna know. Well, they probably won't like call me out on this, you know, or they might not notice. You know, I can go to a party where everyone's drinking and I am totally fine. The only thing that's going to bug me is if people get drunk, because then I'll get annoyed and I'll just leave. But if I just like was in this apartment and Lur was going to be gone for a couple of days and it was just me in here, and I pulled out an old coat and found like a rock of crack and some morphine in it, I would be in trouble. I don't know like I wouldn't be okay. Like, I would need to like take action and like reach out to somebody sort of thing. But that's just to say that like there's something just different almost.
You know, somebody very close to me, I wanted to be roommates with them. You know, this person had an addiction problem that I didn't know about. You know, we signed a year lease together. And so every month at the end of the month, when it was time to pay rent, this person disappeared, was nowhere to be found. So every month I was stressed out.
What happened the first month? They disappeared, and so did you pay the rent? Yeah. Their portion of the rent?
I covered it. Yeah.
And then did you have a conversation about that?
Yes.
In the following month?
Yeah. Well, so...
It's kind of explained away?
Yeah. So the week after I moved in, I found pipes laying on the kitchen counter, like on a paper towel, like they had been washed, cleaned, and were drying. And I knew they weren't marijuana pipes.
They're like rose pipes, like long, with like the,
long stem, bulbous end.
Yeah, for like freebasing.
Yeah, I mean, and this person was like, yeah, I just smoke weed. And like, I've never known this person to smoke weed in our entire lives.
Sure.
So I was like, but it was also that benefit of the doubt thing. Like, I don't want this person to feel ashamed, you know? And it just, over the 12 months, it became an increasing problem.
I'm glad you said that. I don't want this person to feel ashamed.
Yeah.
Again, that's like how I would rationalize that, like, it's okay for me to steal these pills from a friend. I mean, I never thought it was okay. I would feel bad about it, but not that bad. And I would just be like, if they really cared, they would call me out on it. And most likely, they're going to feel too awkward about it. You don't want to, like, call out a friend on being a liar. You'd rather just believe they're okay.
Yeah. So, you know, in famous, you know, Elliot Smith has that song Bottle Up and Explode.
Sure.
I mean, that's how I dealt with things. You know,
Sure.
that's how I thought things were always going to be, how things should be, you know, because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Right.
Like, I was always the magnanimous one in the relationship in my mind, keeping like a tally in my head of all of the grievances and like feeling like I was forgiving that person, or like, you know, like letting them off the hook every single time. And they didn't even know that I was judging them for something.
Right.
You know? So
this is a very even just common roommate thing. There's so much more going on here.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, we tend to do this in all relationships with roommates and things, where things can build and you're keeping a tally. Instead of saying like, your dishes have been here a day, you know, you just wash them because you don't feel like having that uncomfortable parental type of conversation.
Right.
But anyway, in the case of this, it's way different, because it's like this rent thing is happening. You are suspicious that they are lying to you about what you think might be hard drugs. putting the impetus on you to confront them about a drug problem is a lot.
Like you said, like bringing up all these issues, like I am very anti-authoritarian. You know what I mean? It's like I don't ever want to be the person that's like, you must do this. You know what I mean? But like seeing the deleterious effects, and just like over 12 months seeing this person who I love, just like it's affecting me on so many different levels. Emotionally, physically, I had my first panic attack because of this. That's when I actually started to seek help. I was like freaked out.
Yeah.
And of course, what was the medicine I turned to? I was like, oh, I'll just get a weed pen, or I'll just drink more, which is what I did.
Yeah.
And of course, that didn't work. It made things worse.
You're trying to avoid the longer you go not having the conversation.
Said nothing for so long that I don't even remember what it was over. It may have been something over like a dish, or like he passed out on the couch instead of going to his room. And I exploded at him. And I, in that moment, wanted him to feel nothing but shame, And then, of course, the cycle of when I cool down, feeling embarrassed.
When like issues aren't discussed until there's like some breaking point kind of problem, then it comes out in the worst way possible. Because you were living that way for a year, right?
Yeah.
Did you go the full lease?
Yeah. This person like almost wasn't going to move out. They were going to start squatting. The last possible night, made sure everything was out, locked it. So I had the only keys, and I was like, see you later. And then just kind of cut that person out of my life for 3 years.
Was there any direct conversation about the addiction issues, or any admittance like this is what's happening?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. No, definitely. I didn't know.
Yeah. And it was, again, very unskillful in that I made this person go on the defensive immediately.
It's really hard to get anywhere with a discussion like that when there's this also transactional relationship.
I did get back in touch with my old roommate, and they had signed into rehab.
And so you hadn't talked to them
for like
really?
3 years.
Yeah. Wow, so you've just been carrying that for 3 years.
Yeah. It made me realize that, I had been withholding my love from this person. Like, cutting ties means that you're done. Like, I don't love you anymore, essentially. When in fact I did. Yeah. And it was hurting me that I had gone 3 years. It was constantly something I thought about. So I just wanted to tell them, like, look, I still love you. Like, no matter what happens, that doesn't necessarily mean I want to have a relationship with you.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to let you know that I still love you. And they were like, they started crying on the phone and were like, well, thank you for telling me that. I was, you're one of the most important people to me. And I wanted to let you know that I'm going into this rehab program. And I think it was every Sunday, people could visit. So I didn't go every Sunday. There were some times when I was working or whatever, but I would go a lot of Sundays. And that inspired me to, as well, stop abusing alcohol. So it was part like knowing that you had gone on that journey, you had started that journey, and also this other person who was extremely close to me was going on that journey.
Beyond just making you more aware of your own crutches or addictions or patterns that you want to check off, like just in general, it puts bad taste in your mouth of like these substances when you just see somebody's bottom,
And it made me really take responsibility for who I was being in the relationship.
Yeah.
Whereas before then, my anger was righteous. I had righteous anger.
On paper, like the story you just told me, like I don't know many people who would not be angry with that. Like, yeah, maybe you should have done something different, but there was all these circumstances and reasons to not have that conversation, to not be the guy who kicks somebody out. And then, like, what if you had, and then something terrible had happened? You had to carry that guilt for the rest of your life, even though it wouldn't be your fault. And on the same level, like, I totally get that, like, whether or not your anger is righteous, like, it's hurting you.
Yeah.
It's the nature of anger.
I did eventually get my own apartment by myself, a studio apartment, but I carried that pattern over. It had become habitual at that point. You know, I would go, there was a liquor store on Silver Lake Boulevard that every day when I came home from work, I'd pick up, 12, whatever was the cheapest, Tecates or PBRs or whatever. And yeah, I would drink until I lost consciousness.
Yeah.
And then one day I was like, wait a minute. Why am I doing this? Like, I'm still hurting and stuff. But I was like, I'm out of that situation now.
Yeah.
And even realizing that didn't do much, it was a realization, but I kept doing it.
Again, like the Elliot Smith thing.
Yeah.
Most of the time that I was in it, I feel like I was kind of aware of it. Yeah. I was singing songs about, like, I drank too much, like, kind of shit. Like, I was well aware. It's like, yeah, it's super sad. But that's where I'm at. Just didn't see a way out.
One of the things that I addressed in therapy was that I felt like I was never good enough for somebody to want to be in a relationship with me.
It's pretty hard to have a relationship.
Yeah.
When you rely on substances. Every one of my relationships was either directly or indirectly. It certainly played a role in the ending of every single relationship.
I do remember that the last drink that I had was, it was in New Orleans. And they have these drinks there that come in these giant novelty. It looks like a bong without a pipe at the end, but it was called a grenade.
Green?
Yeah.
Yeah. They have often they have a guy dressed as a grenade out in front of that bar too.
That's probably, yeah. I mean, it's probably one of the things that lured me in, because I was like, that's amazing. That's so stupid. Yeah. I love it. And so I got so sick after that was like the last drink that I had that night, after a night of drinking. And just walking down Bourbon Street and just like seeing people, like seeing myself reflected in them. Like, I've been that fucking dipshit so many countless times, and now I can see it, and it's disgusting to me. Another thing that I found challenging is that I had always paired substances with creativity.
Yeah.
It was very tough for me to get back in that zone.
Yeah, because there's a million reasons to not create.
Yeah.
Just like, no one will like this. I suck at this. I should do something more practical with my time. Yeah. Like, all of society is just like if you're not earning $1, what are you doing? You're just playing around.
Wasting your time.
Did you overcome that?
I think working with other people on other people's projects helped me kind of get out of that, because it was like, well, this isn't my project. I can work on this. It'll be fine. It's for this other person. And I think I just did that enough to where I was like, oh, what was I so like afraid of? Or what was stopping me? Yeah. Like, this is fine. I'm fine.
And what happened with your relationship with the person, your roommate?
I stuck with them, with this at sort of like at a distance. This person's now living in sober living, and they do group meetings, and like the mandatory group meetings are still like, it's like, Jesus, do I really have to do this? It's like blah, blah, blah. But they've relapsed, I had to go to the hospital with them. They were in the emergency room. After the hospital incident, Hetty and I went to an Al-Anon meeting.
I was going to ask if you found your way into that.
Yeah. We went to one meeting, sharing with people who, their son was a heroin addict. It's what you said before, like, if I don't enable this person, who knows what's going to happen? Right. If I don't let them sleep, if I don't feed them, if I don't... Yeah. The way that Al-Anon kind of deals with that is, I can't help you with this addiction anymore. I love you, I care about you, and I can't let you stay here. It's not an either or. It's not like a binary thing.
I mean, that's interesting. I really feel like your story like was affected very much by kind of witnessing, you know, someone's recovery simultaneous with someone you're close to's self-destruction, like ending phase of the addiction, hopefully. Whether it's your rock bottom addiction or your you know, triumphant recovery, like it can have an effect on somebody that can be, in the end, positive. Well, thanks for doing this.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Things change. There's this old Chinese proverb. Farmer, he loses a horse, and the neighbors come by and say, hey, sorry you lost your horse. And the farmer says, how do you know it's bad luck? So the next day the horse comes back, and behind is 5 other wild horses. So now the farmer's up 5 horses. Neighbors come by again, and wow, I guess you were right, that was good luck. And then the farmer says, how do you know this is good luck? Farmer's trying to break in one of the new horses, falls off, breaks his leg. Neighbors come by again, sorry you fell off the horse. The farmer cuts him off, says, how do you know it's bad luck? Yeah, I knew you were gonna say that. Next day, war breaks out, but the farmer doesn't have to go because he's got that broken leg. Strangely, the future is not only a change of the present, but it tends to shift our view of the past as well. Thanks for watching, and thanks TJ for sharing.